In Python, a loop is a programming structure that allows you to repeat a block of code multiple times. Loops are used to automate repetitive tasks, iterate through data structure, and perform operations until a specific condition is met. Python has two main types of loops, for and while. In order to demonstrate this, I'm going to turn this into a comment, and then I'm going to go over to how to create loops in Python. So I'm going to start with for loop. Okay. A for loop is typically used when you want to iterate over a sequence of elements, such as a list, string, or range of numbers. So to make a for loop, we enter the keyword for, followed by a variable. So let's say our variable is going to be x, and then we'll say in range, and range is a function. Range is a function, and after the function we put a colon. So inside the function, let's say I want to pass 10, and then in the body of the loop I'm going to print x. So here we have a range function which is going to generate a sequence of numbers from 0 to 9, and then we have the for loop which is going to iterate through these numbers. So this x is a variable that is going to hold these numbers. So whatever we pass in here, if we call our variable a, then we are going to print the a. So since our variable is x, we are printing the x, and this is going to print out this sequence of number. So now if I run this, and here we go. So we have a number from 0 to 9. So let's try another example. I'm going to clear the history, and then I'm going to comment this, and now let's try another example. So let's say we have a variable word, and this variable is going to hold Python as a string, and then I want to iterate through these letters. So I'm going to say for x, or let's say for letters, letter in word. So we have a variable word, and it's holding a string Python. So the letter is also a variable that is going to store the iteration of the word variable. So now I can print letter. So let's test this. If I run this, and here we go. So you can see the iteration of the string Python. So it starts with P, Y, T, H, O, N. Note this can also be changed. If I change this to the variable I, so that means we also will print I. So if I run this, so here you can see we have the same result. So you can name it whatever you like. So let's try more example. So I'm going to clear the history, comment this, and let's say we have a number for num. So let's say for num in range, and then I'm going to pass in 10, comma, and then 20. So now if I print num, let's see what we have. And here it returns a sequence of number from 10 to 19. So here we have specified the starting point, and then we have specified the end point. So we can also add a step number. For example, if I say for num, or let's say number in range, and then we have 1, as the starting point, we'll have 20 as the end point, and then we specify a step. And what happens is that this is going to generate a number from 1 to 19 with a step of 2, and then print each number. So if I print number, and if we run this, and here we go, we have a number being printed from 1 to 19 with a step of 2 before it prints the next number. Next is a while loop. So I'm going to clear the screen and then make this as a comment, and then next we have a while loop. So while loop. A while loop is used when you want to continue executing a block of code as long as a certain condition remains true. This is almost similar to if statement. So let's suppose we have a variable count, and this variable is going to hold 0, and then we are going to write our while loop, while count, which is a count variable, is less than 5. Next we put our colon. So we know that count is holding 0, so it's like saying while 0 is less than 5, and basically 0 is less than 5. So while this statement is true, we want to print count. So if I execute this example is going to loop continuously. So as long as the condition remains true, this is going to loop continuously, and this is what we call an infinite loop in programming. So infinite loop is not really useful because it keeps on looping until it stops by you. So it's basically infinite. So since it's not useful, we are going to add an increment operator so that it gets to a condition, or the count variable will get to a value where it's no longer less than 5. So for example, I'm going to say count as the variable should be equal to the current value of count plus 1. So what it means is this: at the start of our program, we have count equal to 0, and then it checks for the condition. If count is less than 5, fine, which is true, count is less than 5, so we are going to have 0 as the first result. And then when it gets to this count as a variable, we have now reassigned it to the current value of count plus 1. So basically the count variable at line 80 is going to be overwritten. So 0 plus 1 is going to give you 1. So that means our count variable at this point in time is 1. Then the loops will start all over again, and then check if 1, which is the current value of our count, if 1 is less than 5, which is true, 1 is still less than 5. So it's going to print 1. Then we have the count again. 1 plus 1 is 2. So the current value of count is now 2. Is 2 still less than 5? Yes, 2 is less than 5. It prints 2 again, and then it gets to a point where the value is no longer less than 5. For example, 5 is no longer less than 5, so it stops. So because at line 81 the while loop has evaluated to false, then this block of code stops. So if we run this, and here we go, so you can see it starts counting from 0, which is the current value of count, and then it gets to 4, it stops. It could have continued, but because 5 is no longer less than 5. So that is the whole idea about while loop. So another way of doing this is by saying count plus equal to 1. So this is an increment operator. So now if I run this, we'll get the same result. So we can also do another example where we create a countdown. So let's say we have a variable countdown equal to 5, and then we'll say while countdown is greater than 0, then we want to do something. So we want to print countdown, and then now instead of the increment operator, we are going to say countdown minus equal to 1. So if we run this, and here we go, so you can see the countdown started from the highest, started from 5 downward, simply by replacing the plus sign with a minus sign. So let's do another example, and this is going to be a string. Let's say we'll have a num equal to 3, and then we'll say while num is greater than 0, then this time we want to print a string. So we can say this will repeat, just like this. So this will repeat, and then I'm going to say num minus equal to 1. So if I run this, and here we go, this will repeat, this will repeat, this will repeat. So these are a few examples of how to make a loop in Python. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, please do well to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a video. Thank you for joining me, and happy coding.